We're entering week 11 of the NFL season, and that is where the chaos officially starts to kick in the world of best ball. And nobody knows chaos more than me, the Joker of Best Buy. I'm already losing people who are tuning into this video, but it is your best ball review show as we head into week 11. Of course, today I'm going to go through the top players at each position. I'm also going to give a little soliloquy talking about who's the pick that I'm most proud of in best ball. I'm also going to review my portfolio in Underdog, on DraftKings, on Drafters. Let's get into it here. And as always, I have to start off with my little soliloquy check-in kind of thing to set the table for what we're going to talk about today. And which pick am I most proud of? And I think it's going to be an obvious answer right away. It's going to be a guy that hasn't played in about a month. Mr. Anthony Richardson is the pick I'm truly most proud of because he is a guy that typified a lot of things that I look for in fantasy football. Again, the stats that we talk about, the EPA metrics, the rushing, the deep throws, all of that, even though we didn't really get to see his deep throw game fully materialize in the pros. But also just the fact that I really feel like there's a lot of people on social media, and this is something where I'm a person on social media too. Granted, I don't tweet that much anymore, in part because what I'm about to talk about here. There's a lot of people out there that are fake experts, and a lot of people out there that like to pretend like they have the knowledge accumulation, like they have these real, like put in the work to learn these kind of things, to think about their takes and all of that. And sometimes there are people who are actually smart, but don't actually watch the games. They look at data and they just kind of make extrapolations off of that. You guys know, if you're in this community, probably I think you're the same kind of person. I do all of it. I try to kind of roll it into one picture as best I can. I'm not a film guy. I'm not somebody that knows how to break down the all 22 kind of tape things, but I do follow people that do that because I trust people. I have people I think are very smart that I have in my Rolodex. We talked about the QB school guys, of course, the underdog guys as well. But I think the hardest part of fantasy football is just tuning out everybody else's constant need to spit out takes. And it's great for their engagement. There's a lot of guys who I've seen move up the Twitter sphere in a meaningful way over the course of this last season because they just tweet 700 times a day with different takes, usually sarcastic, usually snarky, usually gives them an out both ways where they can be right on one way and they could double speak their way out of the other one. And I'm not trying to bash anybody in particular. I just find it very fucking tedious. As somebody that just enjoys turning on the camera, talking to you guys, hanging out with the Squirt Squad here, and also just loves football. Like even that game last night, obviously was a big kick in the nuts for me as somebody that did play the chalkiest possible outcome of a Bills game. But then you see the little things that you're right about, where we talked about Cortland Sutton yesterday. He's a player that you needed to have on the Broncos side. We also talked about the meta game of the showdown and all that stuff, where I told you guys that I thought that Broncos overloads or Broncos onslaughts were going to be a little bit overowned because of the fact that they were coming up very naturally projections. And then what happens? A 200-way chop for $3,000 in the Millie Maker tournament or the 500K tournament on DraftKings. And I think that's where you have to find your small victories. You have to find your things that you're proud of, is where everybody else is going one way. Everybody else is just happy to kind of keep regurgitating their same bullshit over and over again. If you're doing the work every week and you're trying to find advantages and you're trying to find angles and you have the run bad, at least you know your process is good. At least you know you're doing the right things. So I think that's sort of where I am with things right now in terms of how I'm feeling about the overall ecosystem right now, is that I just don't enjoy going on Twitter right now. It's nothing. If I'm engaging with you guys, that's fun. But I think just seeing people's takes constantly, people victory lapping shit they're not even right about, or people putting things out there and they didn't clearly do their research and telling on themselves a little bit if you are someone that knows what they're talking about. I think it's really hard to be a person who consumes fantasy football content right now because I wouldn't know who to trust. And I would say that, for me, if you come to this show, you see my work every day. You see my takes. You see me if you want to follow my lineups. You can see the same things I do in tournaments that I talk about on here. So I think that's sort of going to be the difference always between Splash Play and everything else out there, is that I'll put in the work for you guys. I'll put in the work for myself, but I'm also not going to ever think that I'm infallible in some way. And I'm not going to be a person that just wants to keep turning out the hit factory of takes to get those Twitter engagements up. It's a thing to me that's really been a pain point. I guess I just wanted to rant about. So that's my first part. The pick that I'm most proud of this week, though, is the guy in the thumbnail, Devin Singletary. And I got to tell you, I'll pull up the screen here. I was hoping that Devin Singletary made a big jump upwards with the big day that he had this past week. He's still RB43 on the year, 22.6 fantasy points this past week. Bunch of dud games here, all under 10 points leading up to this last one, but no Damian Pierce. And there's something that really sticks out to me with Devin Singletary, where if you guys followed, of course, Splash Play over the summer, you might have seen the Spags Stacks videos where I spinned a randomizer wheel to have it tell me who to stack. Remember, I did the Houston Texans stack in one video, and I remember that was the one where the chat and the comments, and not the regulars really, but people kind of straggling in, as is always the case, they really didn't like that I didn't draft Dameon Pierce. They were so mad at me. They're saying, how could you draft the Texans without taking Dameon Pierce? He's the best player. He's going into his second year. He's going to be fantastic. And you know what happens? Devin Singletary puts up a bigger game in 1 week of no Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce has put up this entire year. You know why? Because Dameon Pierce wasn't a player that graded out that well. Sure, he could have made a leap. Kenneth Walker, we've talked about, was a guy that didn't grade out that well for me. We're kind of seeing his role evaporate a little bit, though he had a great week this past one. But overall, like, you know, you're wrong about Kenneth Walker. I'm wrong about Kenneth Walker. Right about Dameon Pierce. I think these are the things that you do have to find a little bit of joy in, is when guys like Singletary come through. Is he going to be a guy that carries me through week 17? I don't think so. I think there's a shot if Houston keeps running this hot. I don't know why they would change things up at this point. Even if Pierce is healthy, I'd imagine that Singletary's earned himself a role with the biggest yardage day that they've had this entire year, as well as the offense clearly humming on all cylinders. But I think for me, I am actually going to say it's AR. This is the pick that I'm most proud of. But I'm proud of the picks that I made where it's really easy to get talked off of picks. JM Twin, I know, talked about this as well recently. Just, you know, saying that, hey, I try to ignore the negative feedback people give about my players because that really spooks you off of things. There's so many people out there just want to shit on your plays, just want to shit on your stuff, and then they, you know, bump up their guys. And even if those guys suck, they just keep chasing them and martingaling them over and over again. And I think you have to have your convictions, and when your convictions actually do hit, and hopefully they will hit over the course of these next 5 weeks, 6 weeks here as we head into week 11. I think you have to have the confidence in yourself, and you have to really be more steeled than ever. Our guy Brandon Wagner, who's a regular here on Splash Play, was telling me over Twitter yesterday that he had a pretty bad run so far to start the NFL DFS season, and he ended up finishing first in one of the showdowns. I think the play action one yesterday was a pretty big chop, obviously, again, because the Broncos were pretty chalky as an onslaught, but still, like, had his big win, was waiting for it to break through. That's going to help him with his bankroll and keep it moving forward. That's the stuff that I think is hard when you're in the weeds, where if things aren't running hot, and I can tell you, like, I've had a couple weeks where I've won a couple grand. I've had a couple weeks where I've gave it all back. Last night I gave away pretty much $500 out of whatever I put into the tournament. So it's tough to deal with the ebbs and flows. It's tough to deal with it all. And I think the noise and the echo chamber and all that stuff, for me, just gets really cumbersome. So I'm just saying it out loud. I think really you have to find the small victories where you get them. And for me, Devin Singletary, he's a small victory for sure, but he's a small victory that mattered a lot for my portfolio. So we're going to talk about that more in a second. And of course, shouts to the chat. There's my monologue. Shouts to the chat as always. They love fake business. I agree. Ty Chandler, there you go. Ty Chandler teams are all up to 9th place. All the Ty Chandler fans out there feeling happy. I would like to see Dwayne McBride get worked in, but yeah, Ty Chandler definitely the better play relative to that one. Never took much Pierce, also because stupid me took 50% Pollard. 50% of anybody is just not a play I would make. I know it worked out once a couple years ago for our pal Felix, who won on the DraftKings Millie Maker. But I would say for most people out there, that's just not the right approach. I think Pete's approach this year of capping at 20% is probably the right one, and one that I'm probably going to get closer to this year because I really felt like I was going to do that this year, and I was like, you know what? I love these guys. I love Christian Watson. I love Anthony Richardson. I want to get 25 to 30% of them. And you know what? Christian Watson, even if he has a breakout game, if his dad's defensive him on social media leads him to greatness, then more power to him. But at this point, I need one spike week to justify that one. But even if it does, I know that it makes up for the 30% ownership I'll have of him. Love is terrible. He keeps getting there. I'll take the sad W. I mean, yeah, Love stacks, I think, are looking okay. It's pretty brutal about Watson. Or martingaling Watson again next year, right? I mean, if you look at his dad's post, Devontae Adams had a pretty bad start to his career, and Christian Watson then went off. Or then Devontae Adams then went off. So, and also worth pointing out for Christian Watson, this was the time of his breakout last year as well. So I don't know that matters. It just feels to me, and this is something that we talked about back in July, August. There were reports that Romeo Dobbs is working pretty heavily with Jordan Love over the course of the offseason. He was flying to California to work with him. Christian Watson was not doing that. And sometimes that is a thing that matters a lot, especially when you are a young receiver like Watson, where he's got a lot of great physical tools, but he's playing real small right now. Every time he's going up for these contested balls, it's like he's fading away every single time, like he's shooting an MJ jumper against the Utah Jazz. That's where I see Christian Watson failing a lot, but I think he can still get there, relatively over the course of the last few weeks because the workload's been there. He had the most targets on the team this past week. But I think for Watson, definitely not proud of that pick. I can tell you that much. But I think it's still, I don't feel bad about the process on that one. And frankly, I don't think Dameon Pierce people should feel bad about the process on that one either. Second-year running back coming in, could theoretically have a little more juice. And he had a lot of juice in his rookie year. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And I think there are valid reasons why it wasn't going to work out. But ultimately, no. If your pick's right, you end up right. If your pick's wrong, you end up wrong. That's just the way it goes. We all need to kind of accept that. I thought you meant QB Deshaun Watson. I read it as marginalizing. No, Deshaun Watson, though, he's marginalizing people in his own different ways. All right, let's talk about these players here. Top overall players, of course, in half-point PPR. We'll look at it again. Josh Allen, despite the dog shit week. And I have to give a defense to Josh Allen, not just because he embarrassed me on the thumbnail yesterday, where I so bravely put an arrow pointing to him saying, best game of 2023, question mark? No, no. But you know what? Like, it's one of those things in football that I need to remind myself of too. And you guys, I hope you keep me honest on that in showdowns in the future. Just a single game sample size of a showdown where I think we saw exactly what we were supposed to see yesterday from the Bills, where they had guys wide open. Gabe Davis catch right through the hands here. That would have been a touchdown. Dalton Cade, another catch right through the hands that would have extended a drive. They had a lot of plays yesterday left on the field. I mean, it wasn't because the Broncos were good. And I know there's people that are going to be like, oh, the Broncos, another game holding a team under 25 points. The points were there for the Bills. They just fucked up over and over and over again. And that's the volatility of a single game. Over the course of a year, teams are going to beat up on the Broncos. But in a single game, they can luck box some things. They can get a sick Patrick Mahomes. They can have a lot of things that end up benefiting them. So for showdowns, I know obviously the big tournament was chopped. On FanDuel, actually, it was a rare non-chop. It was won by our pal Osimo, Alex Baker, of course, the guy who's helped teach me a lot of things that I learned about DFS initially. He won on FanDuel because he just played 4 Broncos and Latavius Murray on FanDuel's format. And obviously there, you know, with the MVP thing, people really do play chalk a lot more. That worked out. But I think that's really the reminder, is that on these single game slates, especially embracing the volatility a little bit more, even when the chalkiest outcome seems like it's impossible to fail. The bad news is that everybody plays that chalky outcome like it's impossible to fail. And that's where you end up with not great lineups. And that's what happened to me last night. Josh Allen here. But yeah, Josh Allen, I think, just should have had a better day yesterday. That's really the main thing to me. A couple throws he left on the field, a couple touchdowns he left on the field. But still, because he runs one in, because he has enough passing production here, he gets you 16.4 fantasy points, holds on to the top spot for one more week with Jalen Hurts not far behind. But Jalen Hurts has passed him in average points, as you can see here. Jalen Hurts, as we've talked about in the Spags rankings videos, he's a top QB on the year. He runs more than Josh Allen. He throws deep more than Josh Allen. Those are all things that are going to bode well for Jalen Hurts moving forward. The part that doesn't bode well for Jalen Hurts potentially is going to be that we do have the Cowboys coming on strong, but if the Cowboys don't win enough, we could see the Eagles start to call off the dogs a little bit down the home stretch. They are 8-1 right now. I think Dallas's recent surge should be enough to put the fear of God in the Eagles to not let up. But because the Cowboys have had a few more losses, and I think the Cowboys are still live, so maybe give one away at some point. Jalen Hurts, I do think, is a risk point come week 17 that he just might not be out there. If he is out there, maybe see one quarter. I think the best thing you could hope for Philly right now is A, for the Cowboys to keep surging, and then B, for the Cardinals to be competitive as well, because Kyler Murray looked very good in that first game. I'll take my lumps on that one. Think he came out a lot stronger. So I don't think he's a fantasy world beater necessarily, but he came out a lot stronger in that spot. And to me, I think that's something with Kyler Murray where if he's going in week 17 and he's going full go, and for some reason the Cardinals have given up the very logical approach of taking out the year to get better picks and have some flexibility, that is something where Jalen Hurts could be called into play too. So if you're a Jalen Hurts backer, I think you want to see Cowboys surging and Kyler Murray being full go throughout the rest of the year. Excuse me while I hack up along, of course, because I'm still deeply sick. Feels great. Feels great. Nothing, a lot of theme weeks out there. I know that sometimes you see on like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, all that stuff. The theme week here of Splash Play is Spags is sick and barely getting through life. So that's your theme week. Christian McCaffrey, 17.2 fantasy points this week. I wonder if our pal Big Lenny will come in and tell me about how great Christian McCaffrey is. You can't argue the results on a year, but Christian McCaffrey, I did see, was going through the DraftKings leaderboard. He was basically like RB10 on the week, even though he gave you a pretty good usable week. Obviously didn't get in the box for that end zone. It's going to hurt him a little bit. But Christian McCaffrey, I think, has done his job. Like, he's paid off what you wanted from him with where you drafted him for sure. But I think the big risk for McCaffrey is that number one, again, just the volume crush. We've talked about it a lot here. Number two is just that other running backs can outscore him. It's not like he's putting up regularly those 40 fantasy point days. And if anything, you can argue that the Niners offense looked a lot better, being a little more agnostic, not just feeding him willy-nilly. They got passes to Kittle. They got a handoff to Deebo Samuel that he broke deep. Got a touchdown to Ayuk. That's when the Niners offense looks its best. It's not when Christian McCaffrey gets 30 touches. So McCaffrey, be happy with him, but Devin Singletary beat him this week. So suck my dick, Big Lenny. Sam Howell coming in at number 4. This is a shocker. Sam Howell, I know our pal Pete very exposed to him. Of course, I have a good amount of Sam Howell as well. Kind of surprised to see him up this high. Did not realize he was kind of on this good of a run, but he's had basically, a bunch of games here that are usable. He's had 2 really big spike week games, 26.4, 24.2, 32 here. So 3 big spike weeks. Sam Howell up at number 4, a bit of a shocker to see, but does kind of make sense as well with some of my lineups might be moving upwards. Yes. SMD Big Lenny. SMD Big Lenny. And may you clear your lungs soon. Thinking of thank you. Thank you. It's really just been a lot of fun to not eat. I'm down 5 pounds of water weight from the last 2 days. So I'm feeling some kind of way right now. Tyreek Hill, number 5. Justin Herbert, number 6. Lamar, number 7. A little surprised to see Herbert at number 6. Obviously, the big spike week here helps him take a big leap upwards. But Herbert, to me, not the same player in most games. Not the player, rather, that has the big upside that we wanted to see. It's Kellen Moore offense. But again, it's almost 30 fantasy points. If it seems to me like the big thing for Justin Herbert, if you took him with anybody who isn't Keenan Allen, I don't think you have any shot to win Best Ball Mania. And I also think you need Keenan Allen to stay healthy as well. That's a key part of what you're doing right now. For Justin Herbert, though, I mean, the fact that I'm pretty sure one of these was the Minnesota game where Keenan Allen went off as well. It seems like his biggest game's coming and Keenan Allen's going absolutely apeshit. Quentin Johnston showing some signs of life could maybe make that a little bit easier to get there without Keenan Allen putting up 30, 40 fantasy points. But I think for Justin Herbert, he's not running quite enough, and he's really dependent on that stat getting there. So for Justin Herbert, I think him at number 6, you got to be happy with that. But also, I don't know that it's anything that I would feel like you're kind of getting what you paid for in terms of his ADP there. Lamar Jackson at number 7, Dak at number 8, Josh Dobbs up to number 9. Josh Dobbs not going to be a factor for anybody besides our pal Ross, aka Robert Griffin III, who did draft Josh Dobbs on DraftKings when he did see that he was getting traded to the Cardinals. So kudos to our guy Ross. I always will now think of Ross and Josh Dobbs together. I'm sure it's very similar looking men as well. But Josh Dobbs, to me, just playing his mind out right now, playing his heart out for Minnesota. He's getting on the banner of the NFL's Twitter handle and all that. Josh Dobbs, if he were a pick that we were aware of, I think would be one of the steals of best ball this year. And I think it just speaks to as well, guys like him, guys like Baker. Baker is not that high on this list. Let me see where Baker actually ranks. Yeah, Baker at 24 overall is not awful. Obviously, QB is going to be a little bit higher scoring, so it's not speaking a ton for Baker. But guys like Josh Dobbs, guys like Baker, same thing as Geno Smith last year, just drafting late QBs who are competent and vets, I think, and for Josh Dobbs, he runs a good amount. Baker has also run more than expected as well this year too. But I think that's really something to keep an eye on for next year, where if there are QBs going late and there are guys that are mobile and able to do some stuff and they have, 3-4 years of seasoning in them, they can land in good spots. Might be worth some draft capital. So obviously 18, 17 round draft capital kind of stuff. But I do think that's interesting to me to note that Josh Dobbs right now, number 9, ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Obviously Mahomes has had a bye. Josh Dobbs is not, even though he had 1 fantasy point in week 1. So for this situation for Josh Dobbs, obviously the run good's incredible, and he's been doing a great job with it. So we'll see how he holds up the rest of the year, but it's hard to imagine him failing with how often he's running right now for Minnesota. Patrick Mahomes comes in at number 10, so nothing too crazy there. I think Mahomes is probably the one. Again, he's had a bye week. A lot of these guys like QB ahead of him have not had a bye week yet, I guess besides Jalen Hurts, who also had one this week. For Mahomes, I worry about him paying off the way you need him to if you drafted him as an elite QB. I was never the biggest fan of him because with the elite QB stuff, I get Josh Allen, I get Jalen Hurts. Those guys run, even though Josh Allen obviously ended up running less so far this year. Patrick Mahomes, though, it's like he runs, but he's not running for touchdowns. He's not doing QB sneaks for touchdowns. He's not really having the outlier days as a passer. He's had this one game over 30 fantasy points on the year, everything else under 26 or less. So for Mahomes' teams, I kind of think we'll see what happens this week. He should put down a big game with Travis Kelce coming off the bye, coming off the love affair in Argentina with Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce playing against the Eagles. A lot of things that should bode well for Monday Night Football next week for Mahomes and Kelce. But still, I think that on the year, I find it hard to believe that Mahomes is worth the pick when you have Dak ahead of him, Lamar ahead of him, Justin Herbert, Sam Howell, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. I think you're seeing everything we talked about in the offseason with the concerns about elite QBs, but also the upside where these guys are great. They're giving you a great point total for the regular season if you're playing on drafters or for the Underdog Best Ball Mania regular season prize pool. But if you're playing to win week 17, I'd rather have Sam Howell right now just to take the upside at much lower ownership and a more logical stack. So that's how I'm feeling about it. Nobody else so interesting here. Stephon Diggs still being at 16 despite a really dog shit game yesterday against the Broncos. Just was not open, was not targeted. You can make the case he got shut down by Patrick Surtain. I think it's more a result of the Buffalo offense being dog shit yesterday. But Diggs, a bit of a downer to see him here, but nice to see him not that far off Keenan Allen, despite the fact that he did have a really awful game there. All right, let's go to the other positions. Cobra Kai just venting in the chat. Baker's still better than Deshaun Watson. Yeah, I mean, in terms of running an offense, I think the Baker credit this year goes more to Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator. Again, young, handsome, buff guy who becomes your offensive coordinator. Just track those guys wherever they go and play their QBs blindly. But I think what he's done with Baker is really more of a result of his coaching and what he's done the previous stops that he's been at. So I think that's something where Canales, I believe, was the one who helped Geno get where he needed to get last year for Seattle. So I think that that's more of a testament to him than it is Baker. But Baker, obviously, playing better than Deshaun right now. But I think that's more because of the flow of the offense than it is like Baker's own talent, personally. Let's see. Henry is fine from the second round. I don't think so. I don't think Derrick Henry's. Well, we'll see in a moment here. Top 10 QBs overall. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Sam Howell again at number 3, Justin Herbert number 4, Lamar Jackson number 5, Dak Prescott number 6, Josh Dobbs number 7, Mahomes number 8, CJ Stroud up to the top 10 at number 9, though. And he has had his bye week already. So pretty impressive that he passed Tua at this point, actually. I know there's a CJ Stroud for MVP case that's going around out there. ESPN seems like they're pushing the agenda a little bit. If you guys, again, watch back in January, when I first looked at all the QB data and then paired it with, I already knew of CJ Stroud. I had made the thesis that CJ Stroud is going to make his receivers better. I unfortunately picked a lot of John Mechie. I got Tank Dell and Mechie the most, but did not grab as much Nico, did not grab as much Robert Woods, did not get Dalton Schultz naturally because of where he was getting drafted. But Stroud has made all of his players better. He's lived up to the hype of that. I think it's something to note when we look at the data next year for, assuming Caleb Williams comes out, Drake May. If these guys have the same success at every level of the field and the numbers look similar to CJ Stroud in the same way that we pointed out then, I think I'll be making similar cases for those guys as well, even if they're not going to be the kind of running players that we like to see sometimes. Stroud, just a pure pocket passer who adds value at every level in terms of the EPA metrics. That has ported over well to the pros, but also he landed with a good offensive coach, Bobby Slowick, coming from San Francisco. So, and there's a lot of things for Stroud that worked out in his favor, but I think it was always his arm talent was there, and it was pretty obvious in college. I was looking at the numbers. Tua at number 10, Brock 11, Jared Goff, and Jordan Love at number 13. Kind of a surprise, but again, just consistent numbers. Like, he's not doing anything great. Kind of thought that offense and him handling pressure, I thought he handled it better with the eye test. We'll look at what the data says after we load it all in tomorrow. But Jordan Love, I thought, looked better in that matchup than he's looked in weeks. So I have some hope for Christian Watson as a result of Jordan Love just looking better. It's just that a connection is just not that strong. But Jordan Love himself, I think, is looking the best he has in a while, probably since like week 1. So for Jordan Love, I'll take that at this point, heading down the home stretch where we need some big games. And there might be a shootout coming, Minnesota Green Bay in week 17. I think that would not shock me based on what we've seen from these guys recently. Please clip that OC take. Okay. You can clip whatever. Wait, what OC? I don't even know what I'm saying. But yes, clip whatever you want of me and rub it in my face afterwards. Who's the biggest disappointment here? Joe Burrow at number 17. Huge disappointment. Kind of a surprise because he actually is coming on pretty strong here. 3 straight games over 20 fantasy points. I think he's not a terrible play. I think guys like him, guys like Josh Allen, their team's underperforming right now, probably mean them being called into action a little bit more to have to do more as we go moving forward. So for Joe Burrow, I feel really strong about his upside moving forward just because this team is going to have to get more aggressive because they're basically playing for their playoff lives right now. Them and the Bills are like hanging on for a playoff spot, much more than you would have expected heading into the year. So I think Joe Burrow will make a move up. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know. I know he's been consistent. This is the worst game he's had in a while going against the Niners. Obviously resurgent after their bye week, after making some trades as well. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is the bust of the draft. I mean, I just don't, again, just relative to the love, and I was always anti-Trevor Lawrence, so I'm in the bag against them for sure. But Trevor Lawrence to me is just like, this is not the leap you wanted to make. It was my concern heading into the year was that he was getting drafted a little bit too highly. He's getting drafted like he was Justin Herbert. And I didn't think that was the case. I also, frankly, preferred AR over him. Obviously, the injury for AR didn't help that out. But I think if AR were healthy, I think that would have been proven to be the correct take. So for Trevor Lawrence, maybe there's a resurgence coming. Zay Jones being out is a thing that I know Jaguars fans have pointed to in the past is why perhaps Trevor Lawrence is not having as much efficacy this year. And Calvin Ridley too, like he's kind of dust and they're treating him like he's still a guy that can go up and get balls. He's not that guy anymore, unfortunately. So for Trevor Lawrence, I think that it can get a little better, but he's just not that good. He's just not that guy. Ultimately, sometimes he's just not that guy. And I think Doug Peterson too. Just you see Doug Peterson teams, this happens a lot. Starts hot, gets worse. I think we saw it a little bit faster here in Jacksonville. Okay. It's just, the hunky OCs. Yes. I stand by the hunky OCs one. Like it's been proven multiple times now. Sean McVay moves up the food chain, becomes a head coach. Things run hot there. Mike McDaniel's not conventionally sexy, but like, he's cute. So I'll throw him in there too. I think it fits. Show me a buff guy. I think Ben Johnson, same thing, like okay looking guy, good shape. I stand by it. I'm not a big, Andy Reid obviously has done a lot of things for big fat OCs and big fat offensive head coaches as well. But I think we got to start looking at, hey, if this guy's looking like he could be on a sexiest man on earth list, then maybe we can plump him in. Maybe we can really buy into his teams. All right, Derek Carr, 20. Yeah, nothing too fun to look at here. Justin Fields, just getting crushed this year. He's probably the elite QB you wanted the least because of the injury. And I think, too, because of the fact that, like, Tyson Bagent's been playing well enough that they just haven't pushed Fields back into action. We'll see if Fields can get out there again soon. I would hope so, because his wrist injury was supposed to be a couple weeks initially, and now we're at a month. But Justin Fields, one of the biggest disappointments relative to ADP as well. Nerdy, sexy McDaniels. I agree. He's nerd sexy. He'd be the kind of guy that girls would go to after like all the hunky offensive coordinators disappoint them in college in their early days out of college. And then they settle down with Mike McDaniels and go, oh, he's just so cuddly and he takes good care of me. And he brings me, if I'm sick, he brings me tea in bed. And I could use a Mike McDaniels right now for that as well. Top running backs on the year. Christian McCaffrey. Oh, let's go half point PPR. This bitch should be a thing. Give me a Spags PowerPoint ranking the OC hunks. I mean, look, I don't even know where to begin with that. But look, it's a pet theory. We'll figure it out. I think once we get to the coaching carousel, that's what I'll do. That is we'll look at who are the coaches that are going to be on the move, and again, we'll really evaluate Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's doing great play calling for the Detroit Lions, but is he hot enough to lead a team to the promised land? We'll find out, I guess, in the offseason. Christian McCaffrey, number 1 overall. But again, he couldn't beat Devin Singletary this week. So how good is he really? You have to ask yourself. But number 1 overall, running backs, it's just, I think that Christian McCaffrey teams still lose in the end unless he puts up 30 or 40 fantasy points in week 17. We'll see how that goes. Obviously going to be a good matchup for them going against Washington in week 17. So for Christian McCaffrey, he's certainly not dead by any stretch in terms of what he's going to give you in terms of the playoffs. But I do think like you're kind of seeing that he's just a running back right now. And I mentioned it earlier. I think if the Niners are going to be functioning at their full capability, it's not just all flown through Christian McCaffrey. It's flown through these other guys and use McCaffrey to take advantage of the spots that are opened up by these guys being great. Instead right now, it's just, these guys are getting a lot of room to operate. Like Debo was wide open because of the fact that it seemed like the Jaguars were keyed in on McCaffrey a little bit more. And Debo just got to the outside and nobody could stop him. I think for McCaffrey, I'm curious to see how these next few weeks go for him because I think he'll still give you, these kind of games, 17, 13-ish, and it's not going to kill you. But I think with where you drafted him, if you start getting dusted by Tyreek, if Justin Jefferson comes in and puts up 40, if Chase puts up 40, McCaffrey team's going to have a tough time. Raheem Mostert, number 2. Travis Etienne, number 3. Bad game for him. We are seeing the run bad, as we talked about. Did kind of feel like Etienne was running a little bit too hot in his touchdowns over expectation. So for Travis Etienne, I think he's going to go where the Jags offense goes, and the Jags offense this week obviously just completely shit the bed. And Brian Robinson at number 4. Yes, he's had a couple big spike weeks here, 24.7, 27.9. That's basically enough to get you in the top 5. And that is why another theory of mine, we could lump it in with the hunky OCs one, running backs are just tight ends. They're just tight ends that people love a little bit more. If you treat them like that, that's how you get the Brian Robinsons of the world. And I wish I had more. I only have 10% in BBM, as we'll look at in the moment. But I think Brian Robinson, definitely a valid play and one that looks a lot better than Antonio Gibson, even with Antonio Gibson having more of that pass game role. Josh Jacobs, number 5, just kind of mitting his way to number 5, but he is there. And again, like Derrick Henry at number 10, like I think these guys to me, I don't think they're wasted picks, but I think you get their production from other running backs late, especially with Kyren Williams coming back in, Devon Achane coming back in, Achane for sure coming in this week, Kyren probably coming in week 12. So for Josh Jacobs, I think that's the risk point for him is that, yeah, if he's giving you 12, if he's giving you 22, great. But if he's giving you more like these games, and then you also get guys like Kyren coming back in, guys like the late running backs starting to surge. If any rookie running backs besides Devon Achane start to surge, that's where Josh Jacobs gets a little bit less valuable. Kenneth Walker, 6. Zach Moss hanging at number 7. Rip Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, unless Jonathan Taylor has an injury. That is true. We've talked about it. Zach Moss's role was evaporating. Taylor had the touchdown this past week against New England in that god-awful game in Germany. Zach Moss's role is basically pure handcuff now. But again, you got enough weeks out of him early on where at least you beat the Deion Jackson and Evan Hall drafters, so you got that going for you. Alvin Kamara, role coming down as well. Taysom Hill did not have a big game, and neither did Kamara with 15 points. I don't think Jameis is going to be good for Kamara either. Like Jameis is going to open things up downfield, assuming that he does start for Derek Carr for a few weeks with Carr concussion, and I think he had a shoulder issue with the concussion when he got hit in that game. He got high-load pretty hard in that Saints game. So Kamara losing Carr would be bad, and Jameis too will invite more Taysom Hill plays onto the field because Jameis is obviously going to fuck things up in the short game a lot. So I think for Kamara, we probably saw the best of him, and I would expect him to start coming down and be more like these games than these games moving forward. And you still do have Kendre Miller lurking as well for a guy who should get more touches down the home stretch, but we'll see how that goes. Bijan Robinson, number 9, Derrick Henry, number 10, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White. Rashad White being 12, pretty impressive for him, given how people buried him. Get another player that in social media, you would have thought that he murdered somebody with how people thought he was dog shit as a human. I don't even know, but as a football player for sure. And instead, he's just a part of a functional offense. So I don't know. The echo chamber to me is just like, I'm very over the social media Twitter echo chamber, which is why I just like talking to you guys and having my own echo chamber here. I just hear my own voice. Jahmyr Gibbs surging upward. Jahmyr Gibbs taking the role away from David Montgomery a lot more than expected. 50-50 share on red zone touches was a bit of a shocker to me. But Jahmyr Gibbs had a lot of juice in that game, broke a really long run that almost went into the end zone. Then they gave him the goal line carry to finish it off. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I think on pace and in a situation to pay off, is relatively lofty ADP over the home stretch. Joe Mixon, James Cook, Kyron Williams still at 19 despite being injured for a while now. Devon Achane still at 24 despite being injured for a while. These are the guys that I'm curious to see get back in there for people's portfolios, because if they are really good, they're going to leave a lot of early drafted running backs in the dust, including Mr. Tony Pollard here, who I'll have no issue playing again this week going against Carolina. But overall, Tony Pollard, things are bad. This is the most down I feel like everybody's been on him, so probably worth playing in DFS. For best ball, though, even if he has a few big games on the home stretch, you might be sunk. And I just don't think he has the same juice he did last year. Any worries on James Cook getting time on the bench again? He fumbled twice in that game. The second one, obviously, he did pick up. It fortunately bounced right back into his chest. He's able to grab it and keep that run going towards the end of the game, even though it didn't actually help him get a win. But for James Cook, I'm not worried about it. I do think Latavius Murray has proven to be competent enough, and he's playing the role that I thought Damian Harris would have. So I've always kind of had that fear for James Cook, that he just wouldn't get the goal line work and that maybe the short yardage work wouldn't be there. And James Cook has not shown enough burst. Like, he's not a 50-yard touchdown guy right now, and he might not ever be. So I think for James Cook, not worried about him, but I don't expect him to have like massive slate breaking upside every week. Just because how this offense flows. Like, there's a lot of ways they could score that don't involve James Cook. Sending love from the overrated Bills country. Poor Sammy. I was talking to Sammy yesterday in the comments of the Showdown video, like, hope the Bills go for 50. And it's like, nope, but at least they broke the 20 points that the Broncos have not been giving up lately. Wide receivers, half-point PPR. Number 1, Tyreek Hill despite the bye week. Number 2, A.J. Brown despite the bye week. Number 3, Keenan Allen. He already had his bye, but he moved back up to number 3 after a good showing, 35 half-point PPR points. Stephon Diggs at number 4. Really need to see some Diggs spike weeks down the home stretch. He has been quiet since that big game against Miami. I'm hoping that he can get there. His brother, Trayvon, basically saying that he wants him out of Buffalo on social media yesterday, which is not a great sign. You know, Diggs is pretty mercurial. I would hope that this is the nut low for Diggs. This is the lowest score he's put up all year. I would think that the next time they're playing, I believe they're on bye this week. But I think that's the case. So if they're on bye week 11, I hope they come out of the bye and really aggressively start targeting Diggs, because I think that's something that'll help my portfolio, but also, like, I don't know how they keep him happy if they don't really start feeding the ball pretty hard. So Diggs at number 4, like the fact he's at number 4 of the year he's had, I think is pretty impressive. But the fact he's ahead of CeeDee Lamb is actually kind of a shocker, but he hasn't had a bye. So that's probably why. Are they week 13? Okay. I thought they were week 11. My bad. So, all right. Fair enough. Stephon Diggs, number 4, CeeDee Lamb, number 5. Of course, CeeDee Lamb's surge, hard to ignore. Pass rate over expectation has been there for Dallas recently. I said it before. This week was a pretty big litmus test for Dallas, because they had that game. No matter what they did in that game was easily in hand going against the Giants because of how bad Tommy DeVito is. And they didn't just run the ball. They could have just run the ball with Pollard. They could have just run the ball with Rico Dowdley if they don't like Pollard. And instead, they kept feeding CeeDee Lamb, had him have an outlier day. Feels like they're allowing him to win at higher points as well, where giving him outside balls more. It's not just slot targets. They're giving him chances to go up and get plays as well. That really bodes well for CeeDee Lamb's usage. And I think you really have to look now, like if we're talking week 17 games where the matchups could really be important, that chalk Amon-Ra CeeDee Lamb start that if you were going 0 RB, a lot of people did, that is one that I would have a lot of fear going against in week 17. Like, I still like Baltimore, Miami. I think that game's pretty good. But Dallas, Detroit, week 17, where you have two really obvious alpha target earners and two teams that are going to keep trying to score a lot in that game to make sure the other team doesn't beat them. I think that is a very dangerous game to be going against when you get into the best ball finals in week 17. Jamar Chase, number 6. This is kind of where I felt like Jamar Chase was. Like, I was never, as you guys know, I also didn't get a lot of number 2 picks on DraftKings or Underdog this year, so I was under the field in Jamar Chase, not by choice. But I always felt like he was a tier behind Justin Jefferson. Obviously, Jefferson being hurt has changed that equation a little bit, but he's now not playing as well as Allen, now not playing as well as Brown, now not playing as well as Diggs, Lamb. Obviously, the Bengals going the wrong way. Still think that he'll have some upside moving forward, but him only putting up 20.9 fantasy points in a game where no T. Higgins is out there, maybe not the greatest sign for Jamar Chase's utility moving forward. But I still think if you drafted him, you're probably okay, because just drafting a wide receiver in the first round is giving you a lot more floor and a lot more ceiling moving forward. But it's just going to come down to which of these guys that went in the first round is going to explode at the end of the year when you need it the most. And you have so many guys that could put up 30, 40 fantasy points in week 17. Tyreek, Brown, Diggs, theoretically, Lamb, Chase, Amon-Ra. These are all guys that got drafted there that I think they're basically the same play heading into the finals. And if you get them into the finals, you have a good shot. And if you have multiples of them, you have a great shot, I think, is how I would feel about that. DJ Moore at number 8, kind of a surprise. He's not been good for a while, but he did have a couple big games, or I guess he had one big game. This is really so this is the kind of reflection on what we talked about the wide receiver landscape throughout the drafting season, where a guy like DJ Moore in previous years maybe goes 5th round, 6th round with where he was in terms of this trade to the Bears and all of that. Instead, he goes in the 3rd, 4th round. But because of the fact that all the wide receivers went higher, DJ Moore was still more valuable than he might have seemed to people, where they're like, oh, I could get Travis Etienne here. And Etienne's been fine, so I don't want to like shit on him. But I get these other guys. I get Breece Hall. I get Josh Jacobs. I get all these other guys. And for DJ Moore, it's like him just being mid and having 2 big games here, 23 and 45. Like, that's it. Like, that's his year, and he's paid off his ADP. But also, like, you're not getting guys like him a little bit later on as you would have gotten in previous years. So I think DJ Moore being at number 8 kind of speaks to what I was talking about, where I think still 0 RB was a good move, or hero RB, where you want to get like upside guys earlier, because like guys like DJ Moore, you know, maybe he doesn't pay off down the home stretch. We'll see if Justin Fields gets back in. But for DJ Moore, it's like you're not finding a DJ Moore in the 7th round necessarily like you were. Obviously, Adam Thielen has paid off and all that. But, you know, Adam Thielen's not in the top 10 anymore. And DJ Moore is, despite, again, just dud week after dud week lately. Mike Evans, number 9, Puka Nacua, number 10, and Adam Thielen falls to number 11. Finally, thank fucking God. Jordan Addison, 12. Michael Pittman, 13. Michael, we're live. Michael Pittman is at 13. I was actually shocked to see how good he did on DraftKings this week. But Michael Pittman doing well, outperforming Devontae Adams. He, relative to ADP, it's Thielen is still the steal of wide receiver, but Pittman was a fucking steal too. So I'm happy to see Pittman being here. That makes me feel pretty good. Olave, Adams, you know, these guys, Olave, I think, is going to have a lot more upside with Jameis. So the Olave bags are not dead by any stretch. Nico Collins bags going the wrong way for sure. We'll see if he can get back out there next game. But Nico, I think, I don't think he's been supplanted in any way, but clearly like Tank could take enough targets away. Robert Woods could take targets away. Noah Brown, who nobody drafted as far as I'm aware. Those are guys that like really can cut into Nico's share that he had early on. So I think there's still a ceiling here, but I think the ceiling is closer to this than it is to this now with how this offense has been running. Jacoby Myers at 17, kind of a shocker there. Tank Dell, top 21, big steal of the draft there. Obviously not as big as Puka, but I'd rather have Tank Dell the rest of the year than have Puka the rest of the year, I believe. Nobody else is shocking. Devontae Smith, big disappointment. Gabe Davis felt he could have had a much bigger game yesterday, but he didn't. Bummer for me, obviously, in the showdown lineups. Pickens at 31, obviously squeaky wheel here, not a factor, with 6 half-point PPR points. And he doesn't get announced to the starters, which is bad for him, but whatever. Tight ends, let's talk about him. Now we'll look at my portfolio. Hockenson now number 1 overall with the bye week for Travis Kelce. So Hawkinson's usage, I think he had a 48% target share this past week. Was something where in Arizona, tight ends were targeted heavily by Josh Dobbs. Dobbs just doesn't have the arm to get it outside quite as much. And he's also constantly on the run and bootlegging outside. So as a result, Hawkinson's pretty good at finding little spaces in between zone coverage or just beating his guys to the sideline. So Hawkinson, I said he was coming for the number 2 spot. He might be coming for number 1 overall tight end. We'll see if Taylor Swift is in attendance for Monday Night Football next week for the Eagles-Chiefs game. But I think that Hockenson is now live to be tight end 1, with Josh Dobbs really being the thing that's going to drive him over the top potentially. Kelsey, number 2, Andrews, number 3. No surprises there. Kittle, number 4. Sam Laporta down to number 6. Still not mad at him overall with where he drafted him, but it does feel like we are seeing a bit of a gap with the elite tight ends now. This is obviously all the elite guys, and unfortunately for the Darren Waller drafters, you're done. You are absolutely buried by not having one of these guys and instead having a guy who's banged up. And if he even comes back into play at any point this year, he's going to have Tommy DeVito, or if Tyrod gets back in off IR, then maybe some shot for Waller to salvage on the home stretch. But I don't know if Waller plays again with the hamstring for him. We'll see. Cole Kmet, Laporta, Taysom Hill at number 7, despite not doing much this week. Dalton Schultz, number 8. Jake Ferguson, another steal of the draft at number 9. Dallas Goedert, number 10. I faded Darren Waller. So did I. But, hey, he came up too high. The camp reports were good, though, so I thought there was a logic in drafting him, but I didn't like the price point for him. But I also didn't like the price point for Kittle, so I kind of dropped the ball there after he was a guy that drove a lot of my best ball success last year. Dallas Goedert, Dalton Kincaid at number 11. Kincaid is one of those guys I think should continue to rise. We'll see what happens when Dawson Knox gets back in the mix, but I think Kincaid should be a top 10 tight end for sure by the end of the year. Logan Thomas, 12. Evan Ingram, 13. Is Michael Mayer coming on at all? Try to sneak a cough in there and just it does not work. Mayer at tight end 30. Could be worse. Biggest game of the year, second biggest game of the year for Michael Mayer. Trey McBride definitely coming on strong. McBride is a guy you probably do want to have some exposure to. If I had to make a guess about guys that can move into the top 10, I would say it's Kincaid, Ingram, maybe. Ingram just needs one spike week game to get there, so I think Ingram could. Logan Thomas, probably not. Jonnu, probably not. Njoku, I would think probably not. I would guess Kincaid, McBride, probably not Musgrave at this point. Yeah, I think it's just Kincaid and McBride that could really make a move up to the top 10. Mayer, if Devontae Adams sits at some point this year, I think could make a surge. He could be a top 10 or top 12. Top 12 rest of the season, yes, but he's not going to climb into the actual top 12, I don't think. But I agree that he could be top 12 rest of the season. But I think that's tight end. I think that sums it up pretty well. And again, it speaks to how bad tight end is that you have Jonnu Smith at number 14 overall. You have, let's see, who else would really be a guy? Fucking Tyler Conklin at 21 overall. Tight end is just bad. It definitely is not something that I have a lot of faith in. Mayer will gain the most. He'll gain the most down the home stretch. Yes, I think as long as Adams and Myers are out there, I don't think he has like 30 fantasy point upside. I do like the usage. I'm very happy to see that. I still think he'll be live heading into that game against Indianapolis in week 17 to give you some points. But I think he's more likely to give you steady 8 to 12 point games than he is to give you like a 30 pointer. But I hope I'm wrong about that because I do love Mayer and I think he's a very strong player. All right, let's look at Underdog here. And guys, before we do that, please do hit that like button down below. Please, there we go. There's a gift. Please hit that like button down below. Please subscribe on Splash Play's endless march to 3K subs where, God forbid, I put Josh Allen on the thumbnail and I lose a few subs because of it. So please subscribe down below here. I would like to get to 3K subs before the end of the year. And now I'm not so confident in it. So please help a brother out. Subscribe down below. Splash Play marches on Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. every single day. I will be here doing something fun for you. All right, so you can see my lineups here. I'm actually going to go to BBM DB to show you guys my lineups. 525 lineups. I forgot to do the calculation before the show. 525 divided by 25. So right now I'm advancing 21 entries out of 150, which is a 14% advance rate. So we are under average on Underdog right now still, unfortunately. Obviously, for me, the big things that are killing my portfolio right now, Anthony Richardson being out, Christian Watson being dog shit. Those are really the two biggest ones. And then a lot of the rookie running backs have not fully panned out. Roshan in particular, Kendre Miller in particular. Those guys have not paid off for me. But I still feel pretty good about where my teams are. So the fact that I do have this many advancing at this point, and my teams are certainly built to benefit from the chaos these final 5 weeks of the season or final 5-6 weeks of the playoffs and all that. That is where I think my teams should rise a little bit more. And you can see here on BBMDB where this is a great site, by the way. Check the URL, bbmdb.com. If you want to look at your teams, you can compare different players and all of that. It's a little bit easier to see how your teams are on these. You can see that I have a few teams here that are live to make a move upwards. This one is 10.7 points back. with a 4 QB build with 3 running backs. This is when I was in my artist phase. So I was doing some weird shit. But there we go. That's that team that's on the move up. But a great way to see your teams that, frankly, I think is a lot better than underdogs. If I were underdog, I would pay whoever built this website to do some shit for me. But that's neither here nor there. But fun way to see your teams. My top scoring team overall is 1291. I'm not sure if it's currently, no, it's not in the top 10,000. It is just outside. What a kick in the nuts. Lamar and Baker, ATN, Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, Tyler Algier, Roshan Johnson, Tyreek, Olave hitting his stride at just the right time. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Odell, Rondale, DJ Chark, Goddard, and Hayden Hurst. I guess if New Orleans Tampa Bay goes off in week 17, will be an interesting spot if this team gets to the finals, but we'll see how that goes. Any other teams? I don't even know what would be an interesting team to look at here. Just so much easier to look at them, though. Oh, God. Fucking phlegm. Kill me. I'm sorry. I am the most disgusting broadcaster right now, and I apologize for it. Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Jahmyr Gibbs. So we have Dallas, Detroit with A.J. Brown. Oh, boy. Oh, we are cooking it. If Brandon Cooks could keep getting the ball in Dallas, we got a contrarian Dallas build here, potentially. So I do like this one. Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Connor, Kamara, Rashad Penny. Fucking Rashad Penny is another guy killing my portfolio, I'm pretty sure. I think I only have him at like 16%, but that's double the field on Rashad Penny. Putting up zeros, not a big help. CeeDee Lamb again, Amon-Ra. Yeah, Dallas, Detroit looking pretty important for some of these teams that I have going on. So hopefully they make it to the finals because I do think, again, Dallas, Detroit looking very live to be a key game for that one. I'm looking at the chat. Got one up to 290 overall, which is one against you, Spags. There you go. Good job. Biggest thing underdog needs is stuff like this. I agree. Like, man, I got to be real with you. Like, I like underdog. They've never been like the most, I would say, accommodating to me in terms of like the deals I get from them and all that stuff. And I do really not appreciate how they handled firing our pal Trill Withers, a guy who used to work with at Barstool, and Coley as well. I think they're kind of running the wrong way. I'm being honest with you right now. Still love the platform. Obviously, I'm happy for our guys who are having success, the Bad Pros and Pete. I'm happy to see them doing stuff with them. But I really think Underdog needs to kind of clean it up a little bit because they've been so user-friendly and so good to people over a course of time. And I can tell you, like, I didn't even get a fucking cactus for my 150 maxing. And, I need to appreciate the people they have a little bit more. And I kind of feel like maybe some people there are not great actors about making the product better and making the experience better for everybody, but whatever. We'll see how it goes. Need this for DK as well. Yeah, I agree. DK is a disaster to try to figure out. I have no idea what teams are drafted on stream. I'm going to have to guess when that happens. But either way, here's my portfolio. My worst team is going to be all the way down here in 676th place. Boy, that's a real kick in the nuts to see that one, huh? Lamar, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Dobbins. Dobbins also a guy that I need to highlight more is killing my portfolio. Him going out early, I think I had just shy of 20% Dobbins, so that's another one that's not helping me out, and especially my zero RB builds, especially seeing fucking Keaton Mitchell go off, because Keaton Mitchell touchdowns, every time you see Keaton Mitchell, that would have been J.K. Dobbins, and I think the world needs to know that. Sanders, Madison, yeah, this team sucks. Devontae Adams is my wide receiver 1. That's not going to work out. Watson, yikes. Michael Thomas, yikes, going the wrong way. A.T. Perry might be coming for that role for Michael Thomas. So that is a fitting last place team, absolutely. DK doesn't give a shit about best ball players. They just want their rake. I did get a survey from DK about best ball after the season started, so maybe they're trying to do it more. They should try to do it more if they're going to be so competitive with underdog. But DK just doesn't do anything well. They don't do media well. They don't do like stuff that's like they don't do anything that's not the core DFS product well, and that's just because they got there first. So for me and DK, I just, it is what it is. But again, you need to call underdogs out a little bit too. Like I know we all love them and whatever. I think that they're making some mistakes with how they're just handling things as they grow, but that happens when companies grow. Number 1 overall is Mikey Juice, 1513. Let's look at his team. What is Mikey Juice's team? And how many entries does Mikey Juice have? You got to wonder. Mikey Juice. What? Did I not put that in right? Oh, Mikey Juice 24. Sorry. I don't want to confuse him with the other 23 Mikey Juices. Okay, Mikey Juice did put in, it seemed like he maxed it, right? He maxed it out, advancing 23% advance rate. His top team, Lamar and Dak, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. So a 0 RB-ish build. Swift, Achane, Warren. Oh, so his team's going to get stronger as it goes. And he does have Miami, Baltimore for week 17. Did he stack this team up? He's got Lamb with Dak. So a little bit of a stack. Might be hard going into week 17 for him, but obviously player selection here pretty strong for Mikey Juice. Yeah, and he got a lot from Curtis Samuel throughout the beginning parts of the year too. So looking like a good team. They're lobbying. Yes, Underdog is too busy lobbying to care about the product right now. They got to spend all the money on that. Best Ball Mania again. So there you go. If you are in the top 10,000, kudos. As again, we just saw on BBM DB. I am not in the top 10,000. Oh no, wait. So this is this inaccurate? All right. Well, I guess that lineup is top 10,000, but for some reason BBM DB doesn't think it's top 10,000. So we got one in by the skin of our fucking teeth. By beating out 42 people, but I don't really care. Again, I just want to be alive for a few lineups in week 17. It's always my goal, and I think it should be yours too. But let's look at DraftKings. DraftKings is a much better tale. There was one point this weekend where I was up to 1675 or something like that with my advance rate, so that would have been really good. But at this number, where's my phone? Got to do the math real fast. Hold on. 1479. 86 divided by 5103, which is the number you get for advancing. I'm advancing 29 out of my 150 teams. So that would be good for a 19% advance rate, almost 20%. So feeling very good on DraftKings still. And again, for me to be doing this with my injuries, with A-Chan out, with Kyron on DraftKings is a big one for me out, I feel really good about my DraftKings portfolio. And once again, I hope you guys are prepared for a world where I'm already starting to bash Underdog a little. So now next year, I'm going to be full bash Underdog because I'm going to be Mr. DraftKings on here going, Jason Robbins is the best guy in the world. He's created a lot of great things. I love DraftKings. I'm never going to forget my Millie Maker win on there. And you're never going to forget it either because you'll hear about it incessantly. But I'm very excited for my DraftKings portfolio. One of the sites didn't update post-Bills game yet. All right, good to know. Good to know. So here's my top team on DraftKings, which I think there was one I had that was like a fucking murder team this week. But this one is pretty good, though. Dak, Brian Robinson, Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Unfortunately, do not have CeeDee Lamb this one. Deebo Samuel, Michael Gallup, Luke Musgrave, Devin Singletary. Who did I take over Lamb? Oh, I took A.J. Brown over Lamb. So that's going to be interesting because this one going into week 17, if it does advance to the finals, I would be going with Dak and A.J. Brown versus Dak and CeeDee Lamb teams. So that might give me some nice leverage, or I might get completely dusted because of the fact that the Eagles don't have to go too hard against the Cardinals. So definitely a risk spot there. This team, though, down to 1 QB with no, I guess not. No, Stafford still technically could play again, but for right now, down to 1 QB with Dak. So I mentioned last year, you guys know if you followed Splash Play, last year did advance a Joe Burrow, Trey Lance team to BBM's finals, advanced an injured QB as well on DraftKings last year with Tua. I think you can advance a team with only 1 QB. So it sucks. Like I think I'm also very live to drag AR along to a finalist team, but obviously we'll see how the variation goes with the pods and all of that. My number 2 team, Jeremy's best DK team is 16-27 and some change. There you go. Good job. Better than mine. As always, is going to be the case. Somebody in chat's got a better score than mine, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as we can all get into the playoffs. That's all we care about. Dak, David Montgomery. Got another Detroit-Dallas stack here. Lamb and Amon-Ra. If this one can fucking hold on, this one is looking pretty nice. Montgomery, White. Oh, we also have a Russ stack here with Dylan, Laporta. Got Pickens, Roshan, who hopefully will come on down the home stretch, so maybe not with Khalil Herbert coming back in. Jerry Jeudy, Madison, Taysom Hill, Tolbert, Vaughn. Oh, my God. My one Deuce Vaughn team is up here. Christ. Allen Robinson, Marvin Mims. This team did a pretty good job this week. We'll see what they do moving forward. I'm not going to make you look at all my DraftKings teams, but I'm very happy with my DraftKings portfolio, so you can probably tell. This one, Houston stack without Dameon Pierce. How could it possibly be doing this well? Stroud, Devin Singletary, Javonte Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tank Dell, DK Metcalf, who, by the way, has not had an outlier game this year. He just on DraftKings gives me steady 15 to 20 fantasy point days. I think DK Metcalf is not the most exciting player in the world to have drafted, but he's absolutely not killing my teams by any stretch. So I'm actually happy with my DK Metcalf shares, even though I know there was some pushback from the community and, of course, our podcast partner, Pete Overzet, in the offseason. Hawkinson, David Montgomery, Pittman here didn't even make the lineup with 16 points. Cook didn't even make the lineup with 16 points. This team is pretty good, and we're going to get A-Chan back, and we're not going to get AR back. unfortunately. And Ronald Jones, this one must have gotten drafted really early in the cycle too, because I have Jelani Woods, who I stopped drafting, Ronald Jones, who I stopped drafting. Jelani Woods, I have to presume, is not going to play this year, which is a fucking disaster. Have some CD, AJ Brown teams that feel very nice. Yeah, CD, when he was falling a little bit in drafts, definitely could have gotten that one. So that's feeling pretty good. Definitely better than Diggs Devontae Adams would be, though. Diggs Devontae Adams might advance. So if it advances, we're still live, but who knows? We'll look at my worst team before I pull up drafters. My worst team on here. And again, a lot of my team's still in the hunt. Like, we're middle of the pack. I'm not, like, I think I could end up with a better advance rate, but we'll see how it goes. What score on DK feels safe at this point? I don't think any. I mean, no score is safe at this point. If you're in the 1300s to 1500s, you're in range. If you're 1500s, you're probably feeling pretty good. But like, I could tell you, I had a few teams that are top of the leagues that finished like in 10th this week because I didn't have Dolphins. I have a lot of Dolphins exposure. Obviously, they didn't play. Yeah, you're definitely not safe with anything, but I guess over 1600, you're probably feeling really good like Jeremy has, but like 1500s, you're feeling like you're getting pretty close. But 13 to 15, you're alive, I would still say. Anything less than 13, pretty tough needle to thread. This one for me, 9th place with 1100, so it'll be tough to dig out. I'm down 300 points, so I would really need somebody to fall apart here up top. Jordan Love, Jalen Warren, James Cook, Olave, McLaurin, Watson, Musgrave. So the Packers stack not doing a lot for me. Pirine, Cup coming back, and it'll be good. This is probably an early team too because we have Trey Lance, Akers dead, Goddard dead for now, Higgins not playing. This team is not going to make a surge, but again, could be worse for a last place team. So I actually feel ecstatic with my 35% advance rate on DK. It depends on how you drafted those guys. Like if you drafted, trying to think who would it be. Like if you're there right now off of Adam Thielen and Kyron Williams and like a lot of guys that hit early but might have a tough time in the back half of the season, I wouldn't feel as confident in that. But like anything that's a positive advance rate, you feel good about. Like for me, it's just like I just want to be at average and have like my kind of builds make it in at average because like I'm building wide receiver heavy builds are going to have hopefully the most upside heading into the playoffs. But yeah, like anything above average, you feel good about. Like I don't know. Good to hear. I have 20 plus teams over 1500 on DK. There you go. Legalize it as a 100% stoned rate. I hope so. Otherwise, you're not living up to the brand. So drafters, bad week for me on drafters. Had one team fall out of the pay window. This is, again, no QBs. So this one is number 2 with no QBs playing for like about a month now. So that's not great. My number 1 team that was top 100 last week fell down. I could tell you exactly why. Well, you can see the running back performance is not great. My wide receivers are fucking killing me here. No Tyreek and Devontae this week. Pittman gave me some points. Pierce gave me 3. Terrace Marshall gave me 2. So that is a pretty big fall here on drafters. I probably drafted the best tight end group on drafters, though, with Hockenson, Kincaid, Taysom Hill. These guys are both, they're all 3 crushing, but these 2 in particular have been crushing a lot lately. And Gus Edwards did make my lineup at running back, but nobody here with an outlier performance. So Breece Hall, again, I wish I didn't have Breece Hall in this build, but it is what it is. Number 1 overall on drafters. Actually, my worst team on drafters, we'll look at that first. Worst team, again, another Fields AR duo with Dobbins, with Herbert. Jesus. With Chase Brown, with Deuce Vaughn. So this is a bad drafters team. But again, this one entry would be enough to pay off all of them. So that is what it is. I still think on drafters next year, the move is going to be to draft more teams on drafters for me. I know our pal Eagles, who has been on the show previously or been in the chat previously. He's I think got 3 in the top 20. Let me see if that's correct. He's got number 16, number 18, number 19. And again, I think Eagles is a sharp drafter, but he's like very much a chalk drafter in terms of like his approach. So I think it really does speak to what you're seeing on drafters where a team like this will be doing pretty well, which, Henry, Walker, like these are like, I think fairly obvious plays. Again, no disrespect to Eagles. People have different styles of drafting. His team, like elite QB, elite tight end, very good team. But not great receivers, but very good team overall. So that's the kind of team that can build and win well on drafters. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Number 1 overall is ASAP Tuna with Justin Herbert. He's got Sam. Wow. That's a really nice QB room for drafters. That's looking pretty good. Saquon, Travis Etienne, Foreman. Yeah. So this team is going to be really live down the home stretch too, getting Kyron and Achane back and also having an out with Mostert in case Achane goes down again. ASAP Tuna looking pretty good. Only a 45-point lead, but still, the team is pretty solid. Receivers, Diggs and Allen. Again, Diggs just gives you usable games for the most part. Allen's been given more spike weeks. Those guys are solid. Tough fall off of there with Dotson. Quentin Johnston surging is good for this guy. Nico, he needs to get back in. So his receivers are probably the most fluid point, but QB and running back, this team is really good. I guess Saquon, maybe not so much. But again, this team is kind of like chalky running back drafting. So I don't know. I think this is a spot for this team where obviously a lot of things went right for him, but I think for drafters, it is really like, I would try to get in as many drafts as possible and just take safer plays, I think is kind of the move. We'll see what ends up winning at the end, but it's my initial read here on drafters is that you're going to do a lot better just kind of, I don't know, just kind of drafting like the obvious plays, like on drafters. Like for a regular season prize where there isn't any sort of pod luck you need to hit and any sort of huge spike you need to hit come week 17, I think you're just better off drafting more of like a median projection play on drafters. And you are drafting like, and you still want to stack it, I think. But median projection plays on drafters, I would say probably the move, just again, based on what I know of how people draft in this range. And again, elite ball knower. Interesting. My most proud draft, I'll tell you after week 17. Okay. What do you want me to do with that one, Paulino? Get out of here. I like you, Paulino, but get out of here. Finally, one of my lineups make it to the top 4 in my best ball room, so maybe you can make a run. Burrow double, Chiefs correlation with Purdy Kittle. Sure. I mean, look, anything can make a run. There's like anybody who would tell you, me or anybody else, that like they know what you need to head into the playoffs and what's going to work out would be lying to you. You can certainly have a read, like a couple of the week 17 games that I mentioned, I think are going to have big upside. Again, Detroit, Dallas, like 2 offenses going pretty hard. Baltimore, Miami, 2 offenses where the defense for Baltimore maybe fucks it up a little bit, but 2 teams again where they have to score above expectation because the opposing team can put up points pretty fast. And for Baltimore, they can put up points on defense as one of the top scoring defenses in the league and on offense. So I think those are the matchups you really are going to be the most excited to see where, like just teams that are going to be playing for something meaningful, but also like their offenses that they're going against an opposing team where like they have to put up points or the opposing team will put up points on them. Those are the spots you want to have for week 17, but it's going to be all luck. It's all fucking dumb luck. All right. Just need to jam and Stroud the next 7 weeks to atone for my featherweight best ball bags. I have a lot of Stroud, but I don't have a lot of Nico. So I need Stroud, Tank Dell to get there. But yeah, Stroud is one of my most exposed QBs. So he's making up for Kenny Pickett being dust. And it all comes down to like, what's the random configuration that's going to get there. So that's how it is. Larry 2 times said every round 15, Dell, Puka, Hunter Henry. Okay. Sure. I mean, I hope that worked for you, Larry. If that's the case, Larry, then you should have some really sick teams, but I don't know. We'll find out. Guys. Either way, one more request, guys, as we close it out. Please do subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. I appreciate the support here. Of course, of all you guys, I should use the smaller version, but really Splash Play Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. I'll always give you guys my honest takes. I'll always be unafraid, I guess, to say some shitty things too, because I only know what reality is. So that's how we approach things here on Splash Play. But I'll always do my best to put the data together and give you guys my fully nuanced takes and why I land on them. That's my promise here on Splash Play. So please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. And of course, shout out to the Squirt Squad. Would not be able to do this show without them. So here are all the people that I am thanking right now for helping us put on this show. And of course, hit the join button down below. $4.99 a month. You get to be on these credits as well as get my data sheet on Saturdays. You get the custom emojis. You get also the thing next to your name. You get a lot of shit here and more to come because I always want to try to add value. So please do hit that join button down below for $4.99 a month and support the show and help me keep putting it on here. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. And I really do hope, if your teams aren't doing well, like it's not dead. Nothing is dead at this point. You got another 5 weeks to get the team where it needs to go. And then hopefully it'll get some pod luck as it goes. So feel proud of your successes. Don't feel ashamed of your misses. Just try to learn from it. Try to get better. That's what we'll do here on Splash Play. I'll be back tomorrow doing the Spags Rankings videos, laboriously crafting graphics to show you guys who I believe are the current top 10 players of each position. We'll talk about them and what their outlook is moving forward. So come back tomorrow for that one. And I will see you guys then. Enjoy your days. Good luck. Bye.